Hey folks, welcome back to another Nodevember episode. This one we are building fire for day 2. Wasn't super sure how to approach this one, tried a few different things and ended up going for a sort of blobby plasticine look. So it's just starting out here with a general shape that I was thinking of taking a cone, and I was thinking of basically passing noise or Voronoi through it to cut out some of that space using SDFs. Which is kind of ultimately the process, but I ended up tweaking it a little bit. So going back in here to create a little bit more of a complex base shape, so a cone intersecting with a sphere, and then passing that through a really simple noise displacement and making sure that I was holding the bottom of the flame in place there. And yeah, just playing with the scale of the noise gives you a little bit of good variation on the surface. Then I did my mesh to SDF grid, so that gives us a really nice clean SDF grid. And then I was experimenting with the field to grid node, but I couldn't get it behaving how I wanted. It seemed a little bit inconsistent and the documentation page was literally empty at the moment. So I ended up shifting gears and went back to using the volume cube, which is a node that we've had for quite a long time. But unfortunately, it creates a volume rather than a grid. So these things are kind of not, you can't work in between them. So ultimately what I had to do was take the mesh to SDF grid and then a sample grid, which I could then start manipulating with just general maths and textures, passing that then into the volume cube. And you can get some pretty nice effects here. I was trying to work out the pacing. It just looks really flickery here because obviously I'm speeding up for the time lapse, but you can kind of get a sense that I'm just moving textures up and choosing how they cut out or add to the original form there. Things did slow down pretty fast when I upped the resolution, but it's important to jump between your preview resolution and your final resolution as you work through a project like this, because there's a lot more detail that comes in those final ones, and you may be under misillusions if you don't keep checking. Even though it's really slow and it's going to take you a few seconds to load each frame, you do just want to make sure that you're looking ahead to make sure that you're not going to get tricked with your final renders. For the material, again, wasn't really super sure what to do with this. I thought about just using the volume coefficient node, and then I tried using the volume scatter node, or the principled volume, as well. And neither of those was really giving an effect that I was particularly happy with. So ultimately decided to switch around and go for a solid surface and try and build some sort of just a really basic Play-Doh shader. So super opaque, little bit, like tiny bit of subsurface just to give a bit of plasticity to the edges, and very high amount of specular, so a very soft white cast across the top of it there. As I was playing with the colours, I thought it would be fun to actually split the flame into 2 sections. So I'd have like a main larger red section and then a core that's burning hotter that can be yellow or white. And this really simple process, if you're doing these SDFs, you can just basically intersect with a sphere SDF, and this is in my case a sphere stretched slightly in the z-axis to make it a bit taller, but also distorted with the same Voronoi that is distorting the rest of the flame. So it feels like it's a part of it rather than just being this kind of constant Boolean in the middle. And yeah, just basically trying to make them feel like separate objects, but the same identity, as it were. So I'm using the exact same shader, they just have a different color using a mask that I'm generating, and yeah, literally everything else about them is the same. The way that I'm separating them as well to give a bit of softness onto the edges is I'm using a smooth maximum to create that difference in the SDFs, and that just allows you to have a little bit more control in how you pull those joints apart, rather than it just being like a sharp seam where the flame is intersecting that sphere. Testing out a little bit of lighting. Obviously, fire itself is emissive, so doing a plasticine or a Play-Doh one was a little bit different because obviously it has to be lit externally. I did have to think about making it just emissive, but it wasn't really looking like how I wanted. So just went for a top-down light. Quite strong lighting, but I just think like the flickering and the general colour lets you know it's fire. So I don't know, I think you can get away with it in this case. You can see here that I'm playing with shifting the thresholds to kind of shrink away the yellow from the red to see if that was going to improve the intersections. And then this is where I eventually changed to using the smooth maximum. So you can see it gets really sharp when I have that high resolution, which again is a good excuse for you to, make sure that you're going in and checking. And then as soon as I switch over to that smooth maximum, you can see that I'm getting a much softer intersection between them, which is it's much more like what you would want for a plasticine effect. Because it's an animation and we're just going for convenient, like social media friendly stuff, this really wanted to be looped. And there's a few ways you can do loops. You can do like the whole splitting sine and cos into a 4D texture, which I have a tutorial on, or what I ended up doing here, which is way easier and like much easier logically as well, is you literally just take your vector that's driving the texture, in my case position, and then you just rotate it. You are literally looping it around, just spinning it around. So I rotate like one full rotation, so tau, into the map range for a set frame range, and then I'm literally just setting the center to control the speed of that rotation. Yeah, bit of a weird one. Not my best work for sure, but a fun one for Nodevember. And yeah, always fun to play with the volume cube and messing around with SDFs. Hope you've had fun, hope you've learned something, and I will catch you in the next one tomorrow.